You don't get rich by working hard. You get rich by letting go. Tonight, you're not just going to listen. You're going to shift, one thought at a time. There's a moment when your body speaks before your mind can catch up. A quiet sigh. A pause that lingers a little longer than it should. A subtle ache in your chest that isn't physical but feels just as heavy. A stillness after another long day of effort, and yet the money didn't come. The relief didn't land, and it feels like you're farther away than before. Maybe that's where you are now. Sitting in the knowing, the ache, the edge of realizing that something has to shift, and it's not you working harder, it's you releasing the belief that you have to. What if I told you the version of you that's been chasing is already tired because it was never built to carry so much? That the striving version of you, the one that's been pushing for weeks, maybe years, is just a shell wrapped around the truth. You've been operating under an old agreement, one that said your worth was in your doing, your value was in your performance, that if you just crossed enough items off your to-do list, maybe, just maybe, you'd finally feel safe. But you've done all of that. You've played the part. You've stayed up till midnight learning new strategies. You've whispered affirmations like prayers, hoping the universe would finally see you, but none of it feels like it's stuck. Why? Because energy never lies. You can fake the words, pretend the smile, write the goals, but underneath it all, if your frequency is rooted in fear, in lack, in doubt, that's the signal you're broadcasting. And money doesn't respond to the words, it responds to the energy behind them. You're not broken. You've just been trained to force things that are meant to flow. You were raised in a world that worships the grind and shames the gentle, that glorifies burnout and mistrusts ease. But here's the truth. Ease isn't weak. Ease isn't weak. Ease is alignment. Soft doesn't mean spineless. It means powerful enough to trust the current of your becoming. So I want to ask you something, a question that only your body can answer. What would it feel like to no longer need to prove anything? Think about that. Really let the idea sink in. What if there was nothing left to chase because it was already yours? What if you didn't have to earn worth or beg for blessings or hustle your way into abundance? Because it's who you are by nature, not by effort. You've heard the phrase "let go" thrown around like spiritual glitter, but let me show you what it really means. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means giving in to your truth. It means releasing grip on the version of you that thinks struggle is the only way. Letting go is an opening, a softening, a return to the frequency that wealth actually lives on. Because you don't manifest money by needing it, you manifest by remembering that you've always been the source, that the external world is just a mirror to your internal permission. And right now, you're being invited to stop pushing and start allowing, to stop efforting and start embodying, to stop thinking you need to become something else, and realize that the version of you who already has it hasn't been somewhere far away. She's been here, waiting for you to stop believing that resistance is required. What if you didn't just believe but actually lived as if nothing was missing? That's where flow begins. Flow isn't something you find. It's who you are when you're no longer swimming upstream trying to fix what was never broken. This isn't about abandoning ambition, not at all. Desire is sacred, expansion is sacred. But pressure, grasping, controlling, that's not power, that's fear in fancy clothes. And the universe doesn't respond to pressure, it responds to presence. So let this be your permission to release the clenched fists, to stop chanting manifestations like SOS signals, to take a deep breath into the version of yourself that doesn't need to hustle because she already knows she is held. Money isn't keeping its distance because you're not working hard enough. It's waiting for you to stop creating energetic friction with your own self-doubt. Flow is the frequency of trust. It's not passive, it's potent. When you operate from flow, you become magnetic, not because you're doing more, but because you're finally in sync with the reality where it's already done. So go ahead, unclench a little, breathe deeper. You don't get rich by working harder. You get rich by becoming the version of you who no longer needs to earn it. She's not in the future, she's in you, right now. The moment you stop forcing, there's something you've been carrying, and it's heavier than you realize. It's not your schedule, it's not your responsibilities, it's not even the pressure to succeed, it's the belief that if you stop working hard, you'll lose everything. That somewhere inside, if you don't push, if you don't constantly strive, it'll all fall apart. Sit with that for a moment. How many times have you chosen effort over intuition, hustle over ease? How many times have you skipped rest because you believed success couldn't happen without it? Not just believed it, felt it in your bones. That tightness in your chest when you wake up late, that guilt when you slow down, that urgency always humming under the surface, whispering, do more or else. Most people don't work hard because they love every second of it. They work hard because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. But fear is not a foundation that can hold abundance, because fear speaks the language of lack. This is the hidden block, the one no one talks about because it wears a socially acceptable mask. Being busy has become a badge of honor. Working yourself into exhaustion is seen as noble. We even glorify burnout, as if sacrificing your well-being is proof that you're committed. But here's what lies beneath that constant striving: a deep-seated belief that ease equals laziness, that stillness is stagnation, that rest must be earned. Pause here, because I want to speak directly to the part of you that secretly thinks you won't be worthy without output. You were never put here to prove anything. You were never put here to convince the world you deserve what you desire. Your worth has never been tied to your productivity. That was conditioned into you. From a young age, you were taught what gets rewarded: gold stars, grades, promotions, praise, and almost always the currency for those rewards was effort, visible, obvious effort. You were taught to trade struggle for breadcrumbs of approval. And when that pattern gets wired into your belief system, hard work becomes your proof of value. Without it, you feel exposed, vulnerable, like nothing is holding you up. But here's the truth you've forgotten. Your value doesn't need proving. It never did. Not to the world, not to money, and certainly not to yourself. Because money isn't energized by your exhaustion. It's energized by your alignment. And alignment has nothing to do with how many hours you put in. Does that mean you sit back and do nothing? No. It means that the energy behind your doing changes. It means your actions rise from clarity, not urgency, from inspiration, not fear, from inner knowing instead of external pressure. Wealth responds not to how busy you are, but to how free you feel. And you cannot feel free when your nervous system is trapped in earning mode, proving mode, survival mode. You cannot receive in your fullest when your body has been conditioned to believe that rest is dangerous. This isn't just about mindset. This lives in your body, your breath, the way your shoulders clench when you open your inbox, the way your heart races when things feel slow, the constant knot of worry that whispers, if I stop now, I'll fall behind. But what if there's nowhere to fall? What if you've been running toward a finish line that never existed, and you're already standing on the ground you were meant to claim? The block isn't the work itself. It's the energy under it, the story that says, I must earn love, earn time, earn rest, earn safety. Money doesn't require you to prove your worthiness. It requires you to remember it. And when you begin to unravel from the grip of conditional value, something inside softens. You stop running. You start listening. You realize that success isn't supposed to feel like struggle, that miracles unfold faster when your soul isn't drowning in pressure, and that who you are being, calm, rooted, open, is always more magnetic than anything you can do while locked in fear. So here's a gentle invitation. Notice when your drive is coming from devotion and when it's coming from panic, from "I love this" versus "I have to." Let go of the belief that only hard things are worthy. Ease is not laziness. It's intelligence, it's alignment, it's truth finally allowed to breathe. When you stop building your life around effort for effort's sake, you'll see what was waiting beneath all along. The version of you that doesn't need to prove anything to receive everything. You weren't born to run, not through life, not after money, not in desperate pursuit of a version of success that was never designed with your soul in mind. But somewhere along the way you started sprinting, faster, harder, waking up with your heart already racing, your thoughts already bracing for battle. You turned into a chaser, not because that's who you are, but because that's who the world told you had to be if you wanted to be worthy, wanted to be safe, wanted to be rich. But chasing always assumes it's not already yours. That belief alone is enough to keep you in eternal motion, grasping for something that could have gently come to you if you had let it. If you had allowed yourself to stop, to soften, to sink into the knowing that you don't have to chase what you become. And here's where it gets real. You've been taught to believe that if you stop chasing, everything will slip away, that stillness equals failure, that trust is weakness. But what if it's the opposite? What if letting yourself rest is the signal the universe has been waiting for? What if your pause, your surrender, is the very magnet that draws what's yours closer? See, when you're running, your energy is frantic. You're broadcasting loud and clear. It's not here, it's not mine, I don't have it yet. But when you return to yourself, quiet, centered, grounded in the version of you who already knows it's done, your frequency shifts. You become a living invitation. What you seek starts seeking you back, because you're finally standing still long enough to receive it. You were never meant to compete with life. You were meant to co-create with it. There is a version of you who doesn't wake up in fear, who doesn't reach for their phone to check the bank account or refresh the email inbox hoping today is the day it finally happens. There's a version of you who doesn't need proof, because they already carry the feeling. And that feeling, that steady hum of "I am already," is the most magnetic state you can exist in. You attract when you become. Not when you pretend, not when you force, not when you mask the doubt with a smile and try to vibrate higher while secretly contracting inside. You attract when your identity shifts, when your core belief transforms from "I hope I get it" to "it's already mine." This is what Neville meant when he said, "Dare to believe in the reality of your assumption and watch the world play its part relative to its fulfillment." It's not about tricking the universe. It's not a hustle for manifestation. It's an embodiment, a remembrance, not of who you need to become, but of who you were before the doubt was installed. And I know it feels impossible sometimes to stop chasing when you've been taught that urgency keeps you safe, to stop running when anxiety wired your nervous system to equate movement with value. But there's nothing lazy about alignment. There is nothing passive about power. The version of you who dare not chase is the version tuned into their deepest resonance. Attraction is never loud, it doesn't shout, it simply glows. So, what if for today, maybe just today, you didn't try so hard? What if you stopped asking how and returned to who? Who are you becoming? Because that's the only real question that matters. Actions fall away, to-do lists rot at the bottom of email chains, but your identity, the vibration of who you believe yourself to be, that lasts, that leads, that calls in miracles while you're busy enjoying your tea and watching the sun filter through your windows. Because when your identity is magnetic, you don't have to hunt, you hold. You hold the vision, you hold the frequency, you hold the trust, you hold the knowing that what's meant for you is not caged behind tasks and time, it's available now, for the version of you who's ready to stop striving, stop scanning, stop stretching beyond yourself, trying to reach what you could be sitting in. You've been running, and maybe it's kept you alive, maybe it's even gotten you some success. But now it's time to allow, to become the presence that wealth is drawn toward. Not because you're perfect, but because you're peaceful. Not because you've hacked the game, but because you've stopped playing the one that says you have to chase love, chase money, chase approval. You're not here to chase, you're here to attract. And you already are. You've been holding your breath for years, not literally, but energetically, a tension in your chest, a clench in your gut, a subtle grip somewhere inside, the part of you that's afraid of what might slip away if you stop controlling, if you stop pushing, that voice inside that whispers, if I let go, it'll all fall apart. But what if that's the only thing keeping it from falling into place? Let's sit in something tender for a moment. When was the last time you truly released your timeline? Not gave up, but softened your grip. When was the last time you stopped micromanaging how, when, and through whom your dream would arrive, and just let it? This is where everything shifts, not because you did something new, but because you stopped doing what was never yours to carry. The truth is, most people don't know how to let go because they never felt safe enough to. Control became their comfort. Hustle became their armor. They believe if they're not obsessing, they must not care. If they're not trying, they must not want it enough. So they white-knuckle their way through the journey. But here's the energetic paradox. The very act of gripping something sends the message that you don't trust it to stay. Or worse, that it's not even here yet. But money, like love, like joy, doesn't dance with desperation, it moves toward belief. It flows into space, and that space, it only opens up when you let go. Letting go doesn't mean letting down. It doesn't mean you stop desiring. It means you stop strangling your manifestation with needing energy. It's a sacred shift, a deep inhale where your nervous system starts to believe, I don't have to chase, I get to allow. And allow doesn't mean passive, it means powerful. It means becoming such a vibrational match to the thing you want that it feels absurd to check if it's working, because of course it is. And it's already done in a frequency you're now inhabiting. Here's what no one told you about surrender. It's electric. It's magnetic. It rearranges the field. Letting go initiates a quantum invitation to the universe, to life itself, to the unseen pathways you could never strategize with logic. And suddenly, release isn't about doing less. It's about trusting more. It's trading your blueprints for belief. And belief, real belief, bends time. You'll begin to notice the rhythm of miracles when you're no longer watching the clock. You'll feel the right people reach out, the email arrive, the opportunity align, not because you forced it, but because you made room for it. And that room? That's the result of emotional unclenching, of no longer needing the outcome to prove something about you, of no longer tying your identity to whether the thing materializes tomorrow or 10 years from now. You're whole now, you're safe now, you're the receiver now. What you release returns, not always the way you imagined, but always in the way that matches your willingness to trust. The moment you release attachment, you reclaim energy. You call your power back from every what if and every how come it hasn't happened yet. You center yourself in the only frequency that actually creates presence. Can you feel that? That softening? That pull into this very breath? That's the beginning of alignment. That's not you giving up. That's you rising into coherence. It's you merging your desire with belief, your vision with peace. Think of a kite. It soars not because you pulled it higher, but because you loosened your grip enough to let the wind catch it. That wind? It shows up for those who finally stop trying to fly with clenched fists. So this is your invitation to loosen, to exhale, to quiet the inner toll-keeper constantly checking on enoughness. Let go. Let go of the how. Let go of the when. Let go of the part of you that thought your value depended on the outcome. When you do, when you really do, something astonishing begins to happen. You start to remember your deepest power was never in the chase, it was in the surrender. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel into the sensation of already being safe, already being supported, already being wealthy. Not one day, not when the check clears, not when you land the deal. Right now, breathe into that. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw unclench. Let your nervous system settle. That feeling right there is the frequency of wealth. Now contrast it to what you were taught. The energy of hustle, the go harder, try more, do whatever it takes narrative. Feel how that sits in your body. Tense, tight, rushed, desperate. You may not consciously think you're desperate, but the energy behind that kind of effort is lack. Because when you try to prove, when you try to earn, when you try to convince the universe you're good enough, your frequency's actually saying, I am not yet. And the universe does not speak English. It doesn't care about your vision boards or how many hours you've sacrificed. It speaks vibration. It responds to the felt reality you're occupying, not the one you're trying to chase. So if your current identity is tethered to proving, grinding, exhausting yourself, then you're tuned to a radio station that money doesn't play on. Wealth vibrates on ease, on certainty, on chill. Think about that one friend who always lands the opportunity with what looks like minimal effort, the one who seems naturally magnetic. They're not lucky, they're aligned. It's not their resume that pulls, it's their energy. They walk into a room and without saying a word, their certainty creates invitation. Because while most people are begging the world to see them as worthy, that person already believes they are, and the universe copies your belief. So many people work themselves numb trying to get rich. But the wealth they're chasing doesn't recognize that frequency. You can't micromanage your way into abundance and expect it to feel like freedom. If the path there is built on force, the end will feel just as heavy. That's why you might know people who make good money but still feel broke inside. It's not just about the numbers, it's about how the numbers feel. You don't just want wealth, you want the version of wealth that feels like exhale, peace, expansion. And to attract that, you have to embody it first. So let's get honest. Do you really think you're manifesting wealth when underneath your daily grind is a belief that rest is dangerous? That ease is for people who've already made it? That slowing down means falling behind? If those beliefs are running the show, then you're tuned to the struggle station. And nothing about struggle attracts abundance. At most, it might summon survival, but not overflow, not thriving, not spaciousness. Here's the truth that may contradict everything you've ever been told. Wealth is subtle. It doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It doesn't need you to prove. Wealth is a whisper, a presence, a choice to relax into enoughness before there's evidence. When you begin to live like it's already done, something changes. Not externally, not right away, but internally. And that's where everything begins. You become less reactive, more intuitive. You begin noticing the nudges that would have been drowned out by your busyness. People start treating you differently, not because you've changed your outfit or pitch, but because your field feels different. There's no cling, no grasp, just openness. That's the frequency that money flocks to. So what if, for once, you stop trying to raise your income by raising your stress threshold? What if you raised your frequency instead? What if you lived today the way you'd live if the $1 million was already in the bank? Not running wild with purchases, but with sovereignty. With clarity, with the quiet confidence that no longer screams, because it doesn't need to. Because it already knows. You've been taught that you need to do more to become more. But you don't manifest wealth by becoming someone different. You manifest wealth by remembering who you already are, underneath the scarcity story. Abundance isn't outside of you. It's stored in your state. So if wealth isn't flowing yet, it's not because you're wrong, broken, or behind. It's because your signal's a little scrambled. Because you're still broadcasting worry when you really want to be sending out certainty. Let this chapter be your reminder. Wealth doesn't come from the tension in your jaw or the long nights at your laptop. It comes from the signal you emit when you trust what most people still doubt, that you don't get rich by controlling it all. You get rich when you match it energetically and let it respond. There's a moment when your chest loosens, your jaw unclenches. That spinning thought loop in your mind finally melts into the background, and for the first time in what feels like forever, you sigh, not out of defeat, but because the pretending is tiring, the trying is exhausting, and something beneath it all, something real, is calling you to soften. That's where it begins. Not with a new planner, not with another 5-step strategy. It begins the moment your body tells the truth your mind's been too busy to hear. You've been bracing for a life you were meant to receive. You don't manifest from tension. You manifest from coherence. You don't receive through gritted teeth and crossed arms. You receive when you exhale, when your energy dissolves from contraction into connection. The moment you relax, the universe hears you clearly, not because you finally spoke louder, but because you finally stopped shouting in fear. For most of your life, you've equated relaxation with irresponsibility. Just being with yourself, resting in the now, you've called that lazy, unproductive, a waste of potential. But what if that's where your true power lives? Not in the constant doing, but in the allowing. Because when you relax, you're not giving up on your desire. You're entering into frequency with it. You're meeting it on its level, where tension cannot survive, where grasping has no voice. Somewhere along the way, the world told you that ease is dangerous, that if you don't keep your foot on the gas, everything you've worked for will slip away. So you kept going. You kept holding your breath, filling in every space with effort. But were you truly trusting life, or just terrified of what might happen if you didn't push? Now feel this in your body. What happens when you allow ease to be safe? When you decide that rest isn't the absence of ambition, it's the presence of belief. That slowing down doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're returning to your own alignment. And alignment is the access point. That's when it comes. That's when things move. You've probably seen it before, maybe in your own life or someone else's. The moment someone stops obsessing, the call finally comes. The offer appears. The relationship shifts, not because of coincidence, but because of coherence. They stopped leaking energy into control. They stopped trying to manipulate timing. And in that softening, things clicked. Why? Because they got out of the way. You can't control infinite intelligence, but you can become receptive to it. And you do that by relaxing, by becoming a safe place to receive. And yes, your body needs to believe it's safe too, not just your mind. If you're still tensing every time you think about money, every time you open your banking app or check your email for some miracle of arrival, then your nervous system is still in scarcity, and money doesn't land in tension, it lands in trust. So let this be the moment you give yourself permission to stop bracing for what if. What if it falls apart? What if it never comes? What if it's too late? Let those thoughts float by. Not because they're evil, but because they're expired. They're echoes of an old you who thought she had to do it all alone. The current you, the one who's reading this sentence right now, doesn't need to prove anymore. You don't need to posture. You don't need to convince the universe you're ready. The moment you breathe consciously into your being, you are. That's the paradox the mind hates, but the soul knows. Relaxation is the most magnetic state in the world. This chapter is not a suggestion to become passive. It's a permission slip to become powerful. Real power doesn't come from muscle. It comes from momentum, and momentum moves best in stillness. It arrives in clarity, the kind of clarity that only shows up when you stop forcing outcomes and start embodying the knowing. It's already happening, even when you can't see it, especially when you stop needing to see it every second. Feel that. Money doesn't need you to stress. It doesn't respond to panic. It responds to presence. You don't become a match to wealth by adding more to your plate. You become a match when you create space. Space for miracles, space for subtle nudges, space for inspired action, not habitual urgency. This isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing from a place of alignment, not anxiety. And you can't fake it. Your body knows the difference. So let yourself melt. Let your shoulders drop. Let yourself remember what it feels like to be safe, even before the proof shows up. That's how you tell the universe you're ready. Not by screaming, "I'm ready," but by becoming the version of you for whom waiting isn't even part of the vocabulary, because she's already embodying the arrival. Breathe deep. Let go. You are not behind. You are not late. You are unfolding. And the moment you relax, you receive. There's a quiet tension you've been carrying, maybe without even realizing it. The tightness in your chest when you open your bank app. The breath you catch when a bill arrives. The heat behind your eyes when you think, "I should be further along than this." That's not just stress, that's energy. That is your nervous system whispering, or maybe shouting, "I don't feel safe." And when you don't feel safe, money doesn't either. Let that sink in. Money is drawn to safety. It doesn't flow where it feels like it has to fight to stay. When your internal world is constantly locked in survival, hustle, urgency, panic, you're not sending an invitation to abundance. You're signaling scarcity. Not because you aren't good enough, not because you aren't grateful enough, but because your entire body is rehearsing lack on a daily basis, even while your words say, "I'm ready for more." You're not broken. You're just wired. Wired for expectation, resistance, protection, because for most of your life, it felt safer to brace than to open, and you thought the bracing was strength. You believed, maybe deep down, that the tension is what keeps you motivated, but what if that tension is what's keeping you stuck? Pause for a moment. Feel into your body, right now, as you read these words. Can you notice where you're gripping? Your jaw? Your gut? Your shoulders? That contraction, that's your money story physically playing itself out, because wealth doesn't land in contracted energy. It can't. It needs space, spaciousness of breath, spaciousness of belief, spaciousness in your nervous system that says, "I can hold it, I can trust this." This isn't about overhauling who you are. It's about softening into who you've always been, beneath the hypervigilance, beneath the force. You see, the nervous system isn't just a physiological system. It's the tuning fork of your receiving field. And when it's deregulated, everything feels too fast, too hard, too far. Rest feels dangerous, ease feels undeserved. But when your system is grounded, regulated, calm, that's when money can come in without triggering panic. That's when you can receive more without self-sabotaging or shrinking. I want you to think about an identity that already feels wealthy, not a fantasy version of you in some distant life, but the version of you that exists when your breath is full and your body is at peace. The version of you that leans back instead of tensing up. The one who doesn't hustle to fix everything, but instead rests into the knowing that everything is shifting in her favor. That version of you isn't desperate for a manifestation, she is the manifestation. And her nervous system is open enough to allow it. This chapter isn't about optimizing or hacking or achieving another state. It's about returning, coming home to the place inside you that never needed to prove, only to regulate, only to remember. Being calm is not laziness. Being soft is not weak. Being at ease is not delusional. In fact, it's magnetic. Because nothing repels wealth quite like fear masquerading as control. Let's go deeper. Most people don't realize that their money blocks are just nervous system patterns in disguise. If you grew up watching survival around money, maybe the fights, the panic, the "we can't afford that," then your body probably thinks wealth requires anxiety. Even today, you might notice how hard it is to feel relaxed when things are going well. That's not sabotage from your mind, that's protection from your body, because the familiar tends to feel safer than the unknown, even if the unknown is abundance. But everything shifts when safety becomes your baseline. No longer a reward you earn after working harder, but the foundation you build right now, breath by breath. Because when you're safe in your own body, you stop chasing safety in your bank account. You anchor into your own signal, a signal that says, I am safe to receive. I am safe to expand. I am safe to have more without losing myself. So while the world keeps screaming for your productivity, I'm inviting you to slow it all down, not because slowing down makes you rich, but because safety makes you receptive. And whatever you're receptive to will come. Money loves to arrive in regulated energy, in that calm inner yes. Not the anxious yes of people-pleasing, but the quiet, grounded yes that comes from within. The yes that doesn't need to hustle because it already holds the frequency of having. Feel that. Breathe into that. You've been performing for money, now you're remembering. There's nothing to perform. There's just something to feel, something to allow. And the safer you feel, the more you'll realize you don't attract money by stressing your way into worthiness. You attract it by becoming the kind of stillness, the kind of sovereignty that money always finds. Let's tell the truth. There's a part of you that still thinks you have to earn it, that you have to justify it, that abundance only arrives after you've checked all the invisible boxes, worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, been good enough. You might not say it out loud, but deep down you're still carrying this quiet equation. If I do all the right things, then I'll deserve wealth. And here's the real reason it hasn't arrived the way you want it to. Because deserving was never the assignment. Alignment was. Deserving is a trap. It whispers, prove yourself a little more, and then you'll be safe. Then you'll be valuable. Then you'll finally be allowed to receive. But who created that rule? Who decided that money only shows up for those who put in the most pain, the most effort, the most emotional gymnastics? You only have to look at life to realize deserving has nothing to do with it. There are people right now, living in luxury, existing in ease, receiving with joy. Not because they deserve more than you, but because they expect it. They don't hustle for worthiness. They don't beg the universe for crumbs. They walk in the energy of course. And what have you been walking in? Be honest. Have you been radiating of course, or have you been subtly waiting for permission? Hoping that if you just hold your breath and get it perfect, the universe will finally tap you on the shoulder and say, now you've earned it. But the universe doesn't speak the language of striving. It mirrors belief. And if your belief is built on waiting to be enough, you'll keep waiting. You'll grind, you'll give, you'll try, but you'll quietly reinforce the signal, I don't have it yet. And so it stays away. The truth is, you were always worthy. From the moment you arrived on this planet, before the accolades, before the burnout, before the bank statements, you didn't have to file an application for abundance. You only had to remember it was already yours. But this world taught you to doubt that, to think of money as a reward and not a reflection, to think you had to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, when all along you were born barefoot and blessed. Here's the part that might sting. Clinging to the myth of deserving means you're still not trusting yourself, still not trusting life, and still trying to justify receiving with a spreadsheet of suffering. But money doesn't respond to effort. It responds to identity. And identity doesn't come from proving. It comes from deciding, from being bold enough to believe, I get to just have this, not because you're special, but because you finally stopped pretending you weren't. Release the courtroom you've built in your mind. You don't need to present your case anymore. You don't need to tally your sacrifices like invoices to the universe. You don't have to earn joy with pain. Let it be okay that you want more. Let it be okay that it gets to come easily. That doesn't make you greedy. That doesn't make you ungrateful. That makes you ready. It's safe now to drop the guilt, to stop tiptoeing for fear someone will think you didn't struggle enough. Struggle isn't what makes you wise. Lack isn't what makes you holy. You don't have to suffer to get rich. You only have to stop believing that you do. Watch what begins to shift the moment you give yourself permission to receive, not because you've done enough, but because you've remembered you already are enough. No more negotiating with your worth, no more performance for acceptance, just the quiet, anchored knowing, I am allowed to have this now. And in that softness, that surrender, that sacred remembering, the receiving begins. You never needed to be more. You only needed to stop believing you were less. There's a reason it hasn't flowed yet. Not because you didn't want it badly enough, not because you didn't work hard enough, but because you were clutching the dream so tight you squeezed all the air out of it, like trying to hold water in a closed fist. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips through. Somewhere along the line, you learned that wanting meant worrying, that dreaming meant obsessing, that to care was to chase, and to chase was to control. But that isn't manifestation. That isn't alignment. That's anxiety dressed up as ambition. You were never meant to be at war with your desires. You were meant to be a landing place for them, not a commander barking orders at the universe, but a receiver. The way a flower receives sunlight, open, still, trusting, that's the energy of detachment. And no, that doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop pressuring. It means your worth is no longer tethered to the outcome. It means your sense of peace doesn't collapse when something takes longer than expected. Because the truth? It's never taking longer, it's just aligning more deeply. When the desire for money becomes the fear you won't have it, you shut the door to receiving. Not because you're wrong, not because you've failed, but because the signal you're sending out to the quantum field is one of lack, not presence. And energy responds in kind. You say, I need it. The field hears, I'll keep you needing. You say, why isn't it here yet? The field responds, let me show you more of it not being here. Not as punishment, but as precision. The universe is wildly obedient to your energetic state. That's why detachment is magnetic. Because when you no longer need it to feel full, you send out the energy of someone who already is. And everything you're asking for is looking for that. It wants to land where it's not urgently summoned, but effortlessly welcomed. Because that, by its nature, is the match. The reflection, the mirror. Call it calm confidence, call it divine neutrality, call it the exhale you've been withholding while holding out for a result. Whatever you call it, know this: the moment you surrender is the moment things begin to shift. Here's the key: letting go doesn't mean giving up. That's the old programming. That's the narrative that kept you in the loop of pushing. Letting go means stepping into the version of you who already knows, who already feels, that it's handled. Neville didn't say to detach because it was convenient. He said it because it's how you create. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and in that assumption there can be no clinging, no bargaining, no begging. So ask yourself this: if you knew without a doubt the money was coming, would you still check your bank account every few hours with a lump in your chest? Would you still rehearse financial disaster in your head, like a movie you hate but can't stop watching? Would you still manipulate every decision, trying to make it lead to success? Or would you breathe deeper? Would you soften your shoulders? Would you start treating your day like the proof of your abundance instead of the test you have to pass? Detachment isn't apathetic. Detachment is the deepest form of faith. It's the calm knowing that life bends for you the deeper into trust you go. Not trust that looks spiritual on the outside but is tight with panic underneath. Real trust. Trust that lets go of ultimatums. Trust that lets time do its job. Because timing is never the problem, your alignment is, and alignment begins the moment you stop needing it. Now, to feel safe, now. You came here to remember who you are, a magnetic, open, irresistible match for wealth. But that signal is fogged over when urgency leads. Soften. Return to the stillness before the story of not enough took hold. Detachment will take you there. Not because it changes your desire, but because it changes your identity. From the seeker to the one being sought, from the controller to the current. Money doesn't want to be demanded, it wants to be allowed. And your stillness, your non-grasping, your ease, is the green light it's been waiting for. Let go of the leash, let go of the timelines, let go of the performance, and in that space, watch what appears. You didn't lose power when you stopped pushing, you reclaimed it. Detachment didn't make you distant, it made you unstoppable. There's a point in this journey where you start to notice, no matter how much you do, it's never enough. You check off the list, you hit the goals, you push through the fatigue, and yet that feeling, the one you thought success would bring, doesn't arrive. It's delayed again, postponed, stuck behind another task, another milestone, another maybe this time. But what if the answer isn't in the next thing you do? What if it's in who you already are? That quiet discomfort you felt, the one whispering that something's off, it's not failure, it's feedback. It's your system trying to tell you that alignment can't be crunch-timed, that all your effort, all your trying, won't matter if it's coming from a version of you who still feels unworthy underneath it. Because energy never lies. You might be able to fake it for others, but life meets truth, and your truth, who you truly believe yourself to be, is echoing louder than any action you take. You don't manifest from your actions alone, you manifest from your identity, from the self-penis you carry when no one's looking, from the assumptions that run you when you're not trying to be positive. And this is where most people quietly sabotage their wealth. They show up, they market themselves, they take the course, share the content, set the intention, but deep inside, they're still not being the version of themselves who feels safe having it all. They're still trying to do enough to become her instead of being her now. Can you feel the shift? Can you feel how subtle and massive that is? The world may have taught you that achievement comes first and confidence comes after. That belief must be earned, but manifestation is the opposite. You believe first, and then the world rearranges. You don't deserve abundance because of what you've been through or what you've done. You align with it through who you're being now. And being doesn't require proof. It requires presence, intention, a willingness to choose a new identity, even when your reality tries to argue against it. Let's feel into that for a moment. If the wealthy, peaceful, fully expressed version of you were already here, the one who doesn't second guess, who doesn't hustle to prove, who simply breathes and receives, how would she show up today? What would she believe about work, about time, about herself? Would she need to justify her rest? Would she apologize for her ease? Would she dilute her receiving to make others feel more comfortable? Or would she trust that just her being, her frequency, her presence, her yes, her no, is enough to shift rooms, call in opportunities, create expansion? That version of you isn't out there. She isn't 10 years ahead and 10 steps away. She's here now, beneath the layers of striving and self-doubt. And she's not waiting for you to do more. She's waiting for you to remember who you are. Because wealth doesn't come from the effortful version of you trying to be seen. It comes from the relaxed version of you who already sees herself. The one who no longer needs to scream her worth through productivity. The one who understands that money whispers back to energy, not effort. And energy is clearest when you stop performing and start embodying. This is your turning point. You don't have to post more, prove more, push more. You only need to come home to the version of you who no longer doubts she's enough. Because when you are her, when you be her, every action you take lands differently. Not because you worked harder, but because your presence carries weight. And presence can't be manufactured, it can only be remembered. And that's the truth no one tells you. It's not the strategy, it's not the schedule, it's you. Who you are ripples louder than anything you say or sell. People can feel when you're aligned. Life can feel it too. And when you embody wealth, not hypothetically, not secretly hoping, but fully live as if it's done, it is. You won't need to force it, or chase it, or become exhausted trying to outwork your doubt. You'll simply be, and being, steady, full, electric being, is louder than anything you could ever do. You've asked. You've visualized. You've affirmed with such intensity that your jaw clenches from repeating it in the mirror every morning. And yet, the thing you want most is still not here. So what happens next? You start tweaking, pushing, adjusting the vibe, changing your words, blaming the moon phase, wondering if you did it right. You begin managing your manifestation like a spreadsheet, checking in constantly to see if the numbers are moving, the signs are showing, the clients are booking, the money is arriving. And just like that, your energy shifts from creation to control. You're not creating anymore, you're micromanaging the miracle. And I get it. You were told to visualize, to feel it as done, and you did, but barely a week passes before you start obsessing. Why isn't it here yet? Did I mess it up? Am I not aligned enough? Should I try harder? The mind rushes in with logic and timelines, trying to turn a quantum process into a linear checklist. But manifestation isn't a performance, it's a remembering. And the need to micromanage comes from one place only, the part of you that doesn't yet believe it's really yours. That energy, that constant checking, grasping, fixing, comes from fear pretending to be productivity. Because if you really trusted that your manifestation was inevitable, would you feel the need to babysit it every hour? Would you feel the need to stalk it, text the universe in all caps like a frustrated lover? You'd relax, you'd breathe, you'd do what the version of you who already has it would do. You'd let it land. Micromanaging the miracle is like digging up a seed every day to make sure it's sprouting. You don't get anxious when you plant sunflowers that first day. You water, you trust the soil, you let light do its thing, and somehow, you believe in that process more than the one that creates empires, opportunities, and overflow. And that's okay, because now you see it. The moment you try to tweak what's already been set in motion, you interrupt its path. You place resistance in front of reception. You trade embodiment for evaluation. And spirit doesn't speak through panic. The quantum doesn't flow through worry. Money doesn't come because you tracked your progress. It comes because you aligned your presence. You don't need to do more. You don't need one more masterclass or journal entry or guided meditation. You don't need to fix the vision. You just need to stop acting like you're the manager of the universe and remember that you're its collaborator. You are not placing an order and then auditioning for it every day. You are the embodiment of what you asked for. So the invitation now is simple. Step back, not out of defeat, but out of deep-rooted confidence. The confidence that knows the moment you let go of control, alignment takes over. It's never about doing everything perfectly. That's another trick of the mind, trying to out-effort a manifestation with perfection. But creation doesn't respond to perfection. It responds to presence. So stop rewriting the wish. Stop sending 100 emails to the same dream. Stop orbiting your desire like a satellite hoping it beams back a signal. Come back to Earth. Come back to you. Come back to the version of yourself who doesn't obsess over whether it's coming, because they already know it is. That version exists right now, just on the other side of all the thoughts you've picked up from the world about what's required. They don't micromanage, they magnetize. They don't obey the timeline, they live in timelessness. And from that frequency, what you desire can finally land. Not because you earned it, because you remembered it was already yours. And maybe that's the real miracle. Not the thing showing up, but you becoming the version of you who stopped chasing, stopped counting, stopped doubting, and started living as the after? What if it's not late? What if it's aligning? What if it's not lost? What if it's landing? You don't need to hold it tighter, you need to open wider. The miracle was never missing. You were just standing in front of it, asking it to prove itself. It can't, but you can. Step back, breathe deep, and let the magic move. It didn't happen the way you thought it would, not through an all-nighter, not after the 100th resume or the perfectly worded email, not even after the journal entry where you demanded the universe send you a sign. It came quietly, effortlessly, as if it had never been far, as if it had only needed you to stop chasing it before it could finally catch you. You let go, and then it all came. What does that moment even feel like? It's not a victory dance. It's not a loud breakthrough. It's more like an exhale, a soft, steady stillness in your chest where anxiety used to live. You wake up one day, not to fireworks or applause, but to a peaceful knowing. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer proving. There is no more gap between you and the life you've wanted, because on an energetic level, you closed it, not by leaping over it, but by dissolving it. Letting go is not a single act. It's a frequency you fall into, a return to your natural state. Before the panic, before the strategizing, before the spreadsheets taped to the fridge labeled "Get Rich Plan." Letting go feels like remembering that you were never meant to effort your way into enoughness. Sit with that. Let the ache of all the years you tried to earn your worth float to the surface and dissolve. You didn't fail. You only operated in a system that taught you to measure success by volume, of hours worked, of tasks completed, of struggle endured. It never told you that the volume of your receiving has always matched the softness of your surrender. This isn't magic, though it feels like it. This isn't luck, though outsiders will swear it must be. It is alignment. And realignment. Again and again. A turning inward when you're tempted to scramble outward. A deep inhale when your ego demands you panic. A smile in traffic. A moment with your feet in the grass. A nap instead of another brainstorm session. These aren't laziness. These are opening spaces where wealth can actually find you. Everything you wanted began pouring in the moment you stopped obsessing over its arrival. Somewhere, deep in the dark soil of you, a switch flipped. Not because of a new affirmation, but because an old belief finally left your body. The one that whispered, "It can't be this easy." The one that screamed, "You don't deserve it yet." The one that had been driving your every action, laced behind every goal. When it dissolved, a cleared path was left behind, and money, opportunity, and support came rushing through like they'd been held at the border, just waiting for emotional clearance. And don't be surprised if this chapter feels like remembering. Your body knows this wisdom. You've felt glimpses of it before, in the quiet moments after surrender, when the answer arrived. You've seen how unexpected checks show up when you stop obsessing. You've noticed serendipities, open doors, miraculous timing. That wasn't coincidence. That was the byproduct of your alignment. You let go, even for a moment, and the universe got to move. That's the shift. Not louder effort, not sharper strategy, but softer seeing. You begin to realize you were never manifesting through doing. You were manifesting through being. Always. And the being you were in that moment of letting go, that was the version of you who already had it, who already knew, who was already grateful, already whole, already enough. And because she wasn't gripping, life came flowing. So now, as you close this book, or maybe just this chapter of your becoming, pause with that feeling, the one rising up in your chest right now, that calm, that serenity, that slight smile that says, "I don't need to chase it anymore." Let it anchor in you, because it's not that you gave up, it's that you gave in to your highest self, to the infinite, untouchable part of you that never needed to strive. You finally stopped pushing the river and let yourself be carried. And where you're going now? It's not somewhere you earn through force. It's a place you remember through faith. You let go, and now it gets to come.